Next up,
Thanks.
we have NewTek Chris Burgos. Chris, we haven't talked in like a year, bro. What's going
Corey,
on? How you
it's been
doing?
a little bit, man. How's it going?
Good.
I
Chris is a NewTek sales engineer and the master of Viz Vector, right? You have that title now, right?
not yet, not that one. Soon to be acquired, probably.
Nice.
I just want to pull back the curtain a little bit and apologize for the little tech issues we were having before this thing all went in, but we are all good. I'm here, and we're actually talking today about the Flex. Corey, have you heard about the Flex?
I have not.
Okay,
I
so
read about it this morning, to be honest. Full disclosure, so I'm excited to see this.
we're going to showcase some cool stuff once again. My name is Chris Burgos, and I'm actually doing this. I'm doing this with the power of the Flex, and I'm actually going to do my entire presentation just like our sort of previous person right in camera. So we're going to go through all of that. I'm going to just be controlling my TriCaster here. The Flex is a new control surface paradigm for NewTek. And I have a little presentation that's going to walk us through some aspects of this. So I'll take over to that. And here's our presentation talking about the Flex. And we're really thinking with the Flex control panel about greater control than ever before. It is our first ever NDI native control surface. But first, I want to give you a little bit of a history about the control panels. You know, back in 2016, when NewTek sort of made the jump into IP, we had these larger scale, very broadcast-centric control panels. So we were showcasing the 4-stripe. We've also had USB control surfaces with NewTek for forever. And basically, we've iterated based upon size or IP needs, and always very sensibly. Right now, though, where we're at is the next paradigm for NewTek. And I think if you've been looking at us for a while, the last major contribution we had was sort of the TC2 and what we were doing with Live Call Connect. But now with the Flex, and there's a picture of it, and I will showcase it to you guys because I do have it in my studio currently, is the opportunity to do greater control than we ever had in NewTek. A lot of beautiful choices made here on the Flex because it is NDI native. We have this beautiful LED readout strip, which I'll showcase in a little bit later, that gives me just words. What are the words of the sources I'm working with, right? If I'm working with a composition shot, something with ME, what show it? Like, for instance, earlier today, when I was earlier on camera, I was using my Prezo for my presentation mix effect. That'll showcase on the control surface. We also have all these knobs at the top that we're seeing. Those knobs are actually allowing you to control audio, because the Flex is the first time we're giving an integrated audio experience into the control surface offering. Finally, because it's NDI, the back of the Flex actually has direct inputs for audio. So if you're using quarter-inch audio, you can get audio out of your system, audio into your system, and you're doing all this NDI control. Mix that with what we've always been doing with TriCaster, the ability to stream, record, the ability to switch multiple inputs, the ability to add your graphics like I did earlier at the presentation, and finally, direct PTZ control in this sort of split layout. So we're looking at easier connectivity, better connectivity, and better control than we ever have with the TriCaster Flex control panel. And it is truly that difference maker as we've been marching forward on this technology with NDI that separates what Flex is from what our previous control surfaces were. And I think when we see this, when we see it in person, if you ever get to see one in your hands, if you're going to be visiting us coming up at NAB, or if you're seeing us in the field, you're working with one of our dealers, it really is slick. It is designed for that user who maybe doesn't have a broadcast background. You still need a T-bar, but there's so many subtle features here that are just, once you have it in your hands, it makes so much sense. Naturally, on the right side of our screen, where we have sort of our little joystick, this little mushroom style joystick, I think it fits with a lot of control paradigms. If we think about the influx of just video games and these sort of like nub control analog controllers, this allows me to very simply grab sources. In TriCaster, that could be a PTZ camera. That could be something like an ME, like the source I was in at the beginning. All over the top, we have control for our output audio, the ability to hit the record button, macro buttons. All of these things are at your fingertips in a very easy way. And it is 16 buttons for crosspoint purposes. So that is a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. And last but not least, we talked about this earlier, but the ability to both incorporate the direct audio into the back of the system and get audio out. So you have 2 channels of audio in, 2 channels of audio out, left and right pairs, 1/4 inch. You also have a talkback channel and a mic channel, so that if you want to, for instance, and I'll showcase when I have my PTZ in a second, I actually do have a mic going into the Flex. The beautiful part about all these audios coming in and out is that on the CS itself, so I don't have to be looking at the system, I actually get little lights going along as my voice is going. So it's really, really easy. And finally, this is an IP-based switcher, control surface for us. So that means that we are able to connect the Flex via IP. But rather than just talk about it, let's showcase what it looks like in person. So I'm going to come back to myself, and here we are. I've got a little effect here where you can see me in studio. So we're going to punch over there. And now we're seeing the Flex CS live, and there's my beautiful hands. You can see a little bit behind the scenes. I have a monitor set up, but I'm actually controlling this PTZ camera. So if you allow me one moment here to position. So I'm going to grab this PTZ. When I hold down my source selector, which is just off camera, it automatically sort of dials into what is a PTZ source. So I have one PTZ source in my system. So I'm going to grab that. And then I can start to control and move, and I have my zoom capabilities. And I'm able to operate this thing fairly functionally. And there I am in shot, a little behind the curtain, you know. Once we're off the green screen, you see things a lot differently. So it's just so slick, and you can start to see little things that are just really easy, right? We see on the physical CS, as I'm speaking to you guys, we're watching all these lights go along with it. My T-bar itself also is doing lights when I'm going through my transitions. The ability to control my focus and iris on something like a PTZ camera at my fingertips. So on my right hand, I've got just control of PTZs. If I'm not working with PTZs, and let's just say I'm just working with a source like me and the ME, this controller also can control that. And I start to think about where the traditional control panel has like its joystick and it's very rigid banks and what we're used to working with DVs and broadcast. And then I look at what the Flex is doing. It really is like a much more contemporary approach. I think if you put this CS in front of a brand new user and just sort of let them start selecting cameras and moving the joystick around, the learning curve is minimal. It is the slickest design. And I say this as someone who's been using NewTek for probably close to 15 years now, both before I worked for them and working with them. There's nothing like just the out-of-the-box experience of putting this in front of somebody. Obviously, it's got the bright colors. It's got all the options available to play and stop your media, pull in your DSKs, work with macros, but just the simplicity of operation when you're working with the Flex, I think is second to none. And then I'm going to sort of showcase, if you give me a second here, I'll go back to me on my main and my UI. I'm going to try to see if I can get my TriCaster's UI as a source here, and I'll give you the inside, literally going inside the system, which is an option we can do with our contemporary TriCasters, and show you what does the audio look like for this guy. I believe we have some questions in chat that I'll get to once we're done, because we're almost at the end of our very quick demo here.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions.
And let me grab that monitor. Okay. Let's grab this guy. Okay, and then we're gonna cut to 7. Okay, so now we're in my TriCaster, right? And when I go to my audio inputs, I can actually see the Flex coming into my TriCaster. So those inputs are easily routable within the nature of my TriCaster. Like, again, it's got the benefit of being an IP-driven system. It's using NDI in the background, but the simple fact that I can just go into my UI and say, hey, I got to grab these inputs. These are IP audio inputs, so technically any NDI system, anyone in my NDI ecosystem can grab it. And I have that microphone, and I have that talkback. I can incorporate that talkback with things like what we do with Live Call Connect, or things we do with Skype. The Flex really is sort of a very contemporarily designed control surface, and I think it really knocks it out of the park when you start to incorporate just all these little features. Again, if you were brand new, having never touched a CS, just being able to say, hey, I can put my audio right in the back, right in the back behind where the buttons are. I can just put a 1/4 inch of audio or take an audio out and feed it to a local speaker. It is just so easy. And I think it really starts to lower some of what we think is the cognitive load, or, how much do I have to think to operate all this? With the Flex, it's really easy. Everything's at your fingertips.
Awesome. Tim Kolb has a question for you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Multiple flexes in one system for separate room subfeed switches? Question mark.
So today, the Flex is, this is a common, I think, idea that comes up, especially when we think about something like the TC2.
Yep.
Right? The TC2 has so many outputs, right? You have 8 outputs of control, and then something like the Flex is really cool. The Flex control interface does allow you to do multiple banks and configure the buttons. So right now, today, if the 2 Flexes are configured identically, everyone's going to talk to everyone the same. There's going to be no difference. But what we're looking at in terms of the evolution of the Flex will be sort of both the ease of use for connectivity, like you can point 2 control Flex, you can point 2 Flex control surfaces to the same system. That's not hard. But what you then have to do is then make sure you have all the right sort of automation and tricks going in there. So we're developing it more on our side now that the system is out in the wild, it's officially released. We are also making improvements into what the Flex is capable of. And this is a very common request, which is beyond, hey, I'm a user, what's possible, giving you guys a very direct access. I think that this is a big difference from where we were with NewTek, which is the Flex is capable of doing this, but we're trying to give it that next level so that you don't have to be a high-level broadcasting engineer to slap 2 of these guys down and basically get the results you want.
The Andy has a question. How do you change to ME control from the program bus?
Sure. Yeah. So
I think he only said it because of the resolution on Zoom, by the way. I think
gotcha.
You demonstrated it, but it was hard to see.
So on the far left side of the control surface, you have all of your capabilities to change layers in the ME, or even a follow preview button. So if you're a person who works with a lot of composed effects, a lot of MEs, you can just have it follow preview, and then sort of the banks will follow along with it. So in the selection on the far left side, where your hand might rest on inputs 1, 2, 3, or 4, when you're doing your basic switching, just a little bit left of that, there is the ability to sort of delegate, hey, what am I controlling with the Flex? Am I selecting a PTZ camera? Am I selecting a layer? And that gives you that opportunity to change those sources or mix those sources, or even if you just wanted to shrink me down in this ME, that capability as well.
Gotcha. Tim asks, what PTZ manufacturer protocols are compatible with the Flex?
As of now, it's NDI. So work with all the NDI PTZs.
Truth be told, almost every major PTZ manufacturer has NDI. Let's be real, right? Panasonic has it now. Everybody has it. So that's good.
There's very few manufacturers I don't know that don't have an NDI PTZ today. But I think also that the scope of what Flex is doing is very NDI centric. So it's an NDI control surface that'll connect to any TriCaster. So whether it's a TriCaster Mini or a TC2, the Flex will work with you.
What about a TriCaster SD? Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It has to be NDI native, which is everything that's on the contemporary gen. It isn't that cool yet.
I'm just aging myself, Chris. I'm just aging myself. Adam asked, can the Flex? Okay, so Adam, I think Adam doesn't. So can the Flex stand alone, or does it have to work with other software and hardware? Not familiar with NewTek. So as Chris said, it really is a controller. Tell me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it is a NDI controller for TriCasters.
You want to point it? Yeah, right now you're pointing at a TriCaster. Now, today, and in this current studio environment, my TriCaster is just in the other room. I am using NDI, so it's IP connected, but we're in the same facility. However, the future of Flex, I think, is where things can get interesting, because we have this cool, slick protocol called Bridge. And Bridge says, hey, my NDI sources don't have to be local. And that is one of the things that we're looking forward to the Flex. I didn't highlight it, but it does have an HDMI out. So the next rev of Flex could be the idea that, well, you do have to have a TriCaster, but where that TriCaster is maybe is a little nebulous. And I think, Corey,
so are we talking about VizVector here? What are we doing here, Chris?
we would be talking about all possible NDI products that are under the VizRT banner that could potentially work in that space that are in that live production mindset. So
I mean, it
whether
makes
it's
sense.
a Vector, or maybe a TriCaster in the cloud, or maybe you're running your own version of sort of distributed production where you have a TriCaster in your main location in New York, but you're on the road and you need to do some sort of like crossover, right? You're starting to see NewTek really branch to this next generation of how do we distribute and grow the IP offerings and also just make it so easy. The connecting this CS, just to speak very frankly, it takes 2 seconds. It is the slickest operation out of the box I've ever had. I gave it a power cable, I gave it a network cable, and then I went looking for my TriCaster on the NDI network. All of this is happening in the screen display on the control surface. I don't have to have a separate app running, so it is approaching this ease of use, like something like an all-in-one system that I think the comment's referring to, but we're still pointing that at a TriCaster, and just how that TriCaster is or where that TriCaster is something we're looking to grow tremendously.
Nice. I think we are going to do a giveaway, right? We're doing a giveaway.
Yes, sir.
So Steve's going to give me that. I don't have any questions. I'm out of questions right now. I think everybody's kind of blown away by the product. So what are the outputs again? So you have the HDMI output. You can put audio into it at the control surface. Like, what is the thinking around the I/O on the CS?
Sure. Okay, so I think really simply, we're thinking about, it's a step away from the broadcast CS, right? Like the broadcast control surfaces that I showcased in the beginning of that presentation, like you're used to those, right? Those large, they eat up the table, the 2-stripe, 4-stripe, that's the tired and true with all the T-bars and a million cross points, that's what we're used to. And I think when we look at what the Flex is this new base, right? It's podcasters who are running microphones into audio surface and then taking 1/4 inch out and jamming it right into the control surface. And the fact that TriCaster doesn't have to live in the podcast studio because the Flex is able to interact with it. That's what we're looking at. Or for schools, we're looking at all these organizations that are sort of in the emerging and growing. Hey, we're growing our production, we're getting new pieces of gear. So the direct I/O for your audio inputs, you have 2 pairs left and right for 1/4 inch for audios 1 and 2. You also have a mic and a talkback, so 2 like sort of more specialized channels in the TriCaster world. Microphone if you wanted to have just a mic input directly, which I do have, or something like talkback for those Skype channels or these Zoom calls or stuff like that. We can inject that, and we're also getting audio out. So there's also 1/4 inch audio out of the Flex. The idea being that with the with the HDMI out and the audio out, you could effectively put a Flex anywhere in your facility and say, hey, grab that TriCaster. Today, the HDMI is still the piece that we are going to get the dev for. Like that, with that is going to come this greater bridge conversation of, well, the TriCaster is somewhere, but my production is right here. Our PTZ cameras are NDI. We're making these audio NDI. So I don't really need to have anything but the Flex, some PTZ cameras, and whatever my local audio is, and an audio board, and I'm good to go. I don't always have to lug that system with me. And once we start to approach that, I think one of those early questions we had, which is multiple Flexes doing multiple things, becomes a reality. You can get a lot out of your TC2 with all of those outputs and inputs.
Well, and so right now, like you said, that really the HDMI out is an NDI converter, right? It's taking the TriCast, it's using NDI bridge and then spitting out whatever you want. Is that how it kind of works?
Right now, it does not do that. That is the next goal for the Flex.
Got it.
Yes. We would, if that was the case, Corey, I'd be doing this with my kitchen table. I would 100% push it to its limit, because right now we're doing everything sort of in your facility, but that bridge is the next step that we're looking at in all respects when NewTek is building this greater IP. So the Flex control surface is control, and then you're going to see us continue to expand the functionality throughout the ecosystem. That'll be more products that are offering this greater level of distribution, as well as sort of tackling the complexities, right? This guy is easy to use so that anyone touching it can start making their show happen.
Well, and that's really the promise of NDI, right? It's like, I've got this IP connection, so now what are all these things that I can do with it?
What do I gain from it exactly?
Awesome. I want to say, Peter Cowles, you are the winner of our giveaway today.
Congrats, Peter.
I got one more question for you. Tim asks, similar setup to my 2-stripe control surface at the TriCaster, or more like an NDI source? It's kind of
much more like an NDI source. Actually, connectivity to it is super easy. On the CS, there's a little configuration command. You hold down 3 keys, and it'll give you a source selector, so you can point to the TriCaster you want. So unlike the 2-stripe and the 4-stripe, which have like a little bit of bulkier admin, the Flex actually connects to the surface. It's really slick like that.
Nice. Mike asked, can a control software-based vision mixer or other tools outside the TriCaster? And I'm going to answer him, not currently, right? But maybe in the future.
Not currently. And yeah, the expansion for this is, at least for today, is going to stay pretty much within the Viz wheelhouse, the Viz group wheelhouse. That said, all roads in NDI always expand, right? We're talking about, this is the new way we're sort of moving with Viz Group in these distributed production models, and looking particularly at NewTek, is like, hey, getting these systems all over the place. That's going to be a lot of the offerings you're going to see, as we roll through the year, are going to be, how do we incorporate this sort of greater IP connectivity, and what can we do with it? If you follow NewTek, 2 years, the development never stops. Yeah. And so the idea for this thing to grow beyond that is certainly possible.
So what you're saying is it's not a Stream Deck yet. It's so funny because the AVI trainer says, Mike, maybe if Central Control builds up to support this controller, which again, like, it goes to this idea, you were discussing, it goes to the idea of NDI, and why you guys came out with the protocol is to connect things, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's to connect things over IP. So, it's very, very interesting. I'm very excited about it. Chris, thank you so much for the demo. And if anybody has any questions for Chris, we did go through all your questions, Chris. But if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. Chris will answer them. And thank you, Chris. Thank you for that NewTek Flex.